Hello and welcome to Devereux's Fireside Chat video series. My name is Amy Ashman. I am Devereux's National Director of Communications. Last fall, Devereux introduced its new strategic plan for fiscal years 2023 to 2025. Our strategic plan includes 6 areas or planks that will help guide our organization as we move forward and allow us to measure our efforts against certain goals over the next few years. In today's Fireside Chat, we're connecting with a few key leaders to dig into the first strategic plank, industry-leading programs and services. These key Devereux leaders include President and CEO Carl Clark, Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer Dr. Rhea Fernandes, and Senior Vice President and Chief Clinical and Medical Officer Dr. Yolanda Graham. Thank you all for being here today.
It's good to be
Happy to be here.
Let's dive in. All right. Well, Carl, as you well know, our first strategic plank, called Industry Leading Programs and Services, consists of 3 main areas: becoming best in class for client safety, meeting the Devereux family standard, and externally validating our excellence. We'll get into the specifics of each area shortly, but at a high level, what does having industry-leading programs and services mean to you?
Quite simply, the best that we can be, right? And we continue to strive toward that. And it's Helena Devereux had a saying, "You're always en route. You're always pursuing that excellence." So we find ourselves encouraged by the path ahead of us and hope that we will excel among all the organizations that work in this field.
Thank you, Carl. All right, so now we're going to get into specifics. As I mentioned, the first plank of our strategic plan is broken down into 3 areas. The first is about becoming best in class for client safety. My next question is for Yolanda. What does it mean that we want to become best in class for client safety, and how will Devereux's integrated quality and safety model help us in this quest?
Thanks, Amy. Best in class for client safety means using research-supported and evidence-based treatments and interventions to ensure that the individuals and the clients we serve receive high-quality services that really are targeted and meet their treatment needs.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Yolanda. And to follow up, would you share some of the areas or action plans your clinical team is working on to help us become best in class for client safety?
Sure, I'd be happy to. As many of you are already aware, we are currently seeking accreditation through Presidium, which is an international company that specializes in helping youth-serving organizations demonstrate the highest level of standards in preventing sexual abuse. As far as our clinical models, Devereux's PBIS model, or Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports, is our foundational trauma-informed approach to all that we do. Then outside of our universal interventions, there are higher level interventions that are really population specific. Some of these include dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, which is an evidence-based therapy that we use in our behavioral health clients that really helps them focus on building a life worth living by learning to regulate very strong emotions. We also offer specialized services for youth who are victims of sex trafficking within our behavioral health programs. In our autism population, we focus on teaching functional communication and using functional behavioral assessments to develop positive behavior support plans. And that is also our focus in our adult population, but I'm really excited that this year we also introduced specialized assessments within our adult population, where we're training all of our providers on being able to administer assessments that really are specific to the unique needs of adults in our population. And I know that's a lot of clinical observations and interventions, and I know, Rhea, you probably have some other examples.
I do, and thanks, Yolanda. I think that all of the clinical interventions is what elevates us, differentiates us, and really provides our clients and our families, our individuals, a best in class care that they deserve, right? And it also has to be supported by the right infrastructure and the right technology. And we've got to make sure that just as we are ensuring that our clinical interventions are always cutting edge and best in class, that our physical and technological infrastructure is also ahead of the curve. And so this means we're constantly having to evaluate our facilities and have a really critical eye to risk and safety and making sure that we're meeting the family standard. So the question really is that physical infrastructure, our programs and services good enough for us and our loved ones? And if not, then ensuring that they are everything from the details around, what do our furniture and fixtures look like and lighting, to ensuring that we have clean lines of sight for supervision, and that our facilities are comfortable and appealing. Similar with technology, whether it's video monitoring or key card access, security systems, we've got to constantly evaluate these and upgrade them and customize them to the type of program and service that we're operating. They've got to enhance our clinical practices, and they've got to support the dedicated teams that we have to do the best work that they can do. We can take great satisfaction in knowing that we've made significant investments in our capital, and we're increasing that year over year. We are able to balance the internal expertise that we have, and we also seek external expertise when we make choice in looking at these areas. And we listen to our colleagues on the front lines for their input.
Thank you all for your help there. As we work to become best in class for client safety, we are also placing critical importance on meeting the Devereux standard every time with every interaction. Rhea, would you please explain what the Devereux family standard is, and then why are the words safety, quality, dignity, and trust key factors in helping us meet this standard?
Yeah, sure, Amy. The Devereux family standard, fundamentally, it's the principle that if our programs and services, they have to be good enough for us and for our loved ones to receive care. And where we find that there's aspects of our programs that don't meet that litmus test, we have to act swiftly and assertively to address it. When we did our most recent update to our new strategic plan, we talked to families across the arc of our organization and individuals, including families on our board and our advisory boards. And what they all said was very consistent with the healthcare literature, which is, yes, everybody wants the most cutting edge, proven, best outcomes in clinical interventions. But when they're making a decision about where to place their loved one, especially for the long term, what they want first and foremost is peace of mind, and to trust that their loved one is being taken care of, to having a safe and nurturing, comfortable environment for them, that they every day are experiencing that the people around them genuinely care about them as a person, and they interact with them in a way that respects their human dignity and independence to the greatest extent possible. So it seems very simple, but it takes a lot of intention and planning. It takes investment to maintain a culture that supports that kind of environment of care, down to every single one of our staff who are interacting with the person on a day-to-day basis.
So to build on what Rhea just mentioned, we have built into our structure a requirement of our governing body bylaws that requires at least 5 individuals have children served in our programs or have lived experience. So it really brings a different point of attention. Rhea mentioned how important is that peace of mind, right? So when I'm no longer here, I know that my family member is going to be well cared for at Devereux. And that's an incredibly, both an important element of what we do, but it's also quite a challenge for us, right, to live up to that standard. And we are all engaged in doing that each and every day.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Carl, people may not be aware, but when we host our board meetings, we actually host them in cities where our centers are located so that our board of trustees has an opportunity to visit our programs. right? And that's a level of accountability that is extremely important, I think, in us continuing to meet the Devereux family standard. You mentioned that, bylaws require that 5 of our board members at least have individuals in care. Well, they're looking at our programs through a different lens. When we talk about the Devereux family standard, they really are looking at our programs through that standard. And that really helps us to make sure that we're continually evaluating our environments and providing the highest level of care.
Yolanda, I wanted to follow up when we talk about this and we talk about the family standard. What are some of the initiatives or programs or procedures we practice or follow to help us meet this standard from a clinical standpoint?
Right, Amy. Well, I mentioned our board visits to our campus. Well, in addition to that, we have licensing and accreditation bodies come to our campuses all the time to review our programs, to make sure that we are demonstrating the highest level of quality and safety, right? And that happens a lot in our residential programs, but also in our group homes. And in our group homes, we have a requirement that every group home is inspected annually. We also have a national family engagement and partnership work group with a focus on pushing out family initiatives at our centers and creating a culture where the voices of our clients, individuals, and families are valued and encouraged. We update our family welcome books twice a year because we want to make sure that the information we're providing to our families is accurate and that it meets their needs.
Thanks, Yolanda. Just like Carl was saying, that's a lot of accountability, and that is a lot to live up to.
It's a great source of effort for us, too. When Dr. Graham talks about those individual home reviews that we do, we have over 260 group homes. So there's a great deal of effort that goes into that activity just to focus on quality and safety. And we're proud of it that we have put ourselves to a higher standard than just a regulatory or licensing body, that we've raised that bar even higher.
Thank you, Carl. So at this point, we've talked about becoming best in class for client safety, talked about the Devereux family standard, and the final area within Devereux's first strategic plank is about externally validating our excellence. Yolanda, what does this mean and how do we do this?
We also use the Building Bridges Initiative self-assessment. And really the Building Bridges Initiatives is about best practices in residential care. And, over the last 2 years, our newest initiative was the Youth Advisory Council that I mentioned as being a way to really engage youth voice in a leadership capacity. And beginning in the fall of 2023, we will implement a similar biannual survey process of our adult programs called the Person-Centered Organizational Assessment. And that assessment really allows us to assess, are we using person-centered practices and allowing individual choice as we work with our adults? So that's just a few of the examples of the things that we do to validate our success.
Thank you, Yolanda. And, so we've talked about these 3 areas under this first strategic plank. And Rhea, we have such a wide geographic footprint. How will we achieve consistency in implementing best practices to achieve excellence?
It's a great question, Amy, and that's where really the rubber meets the road, right? Having the intent, and luckily we have the resources to be able to do this. It's the execution. It comes down to the execution. So I would say that, first and foremost, in order to do this, it takes excellent leadership and vision, first and foremost. And we all feel every day and know that in that regard, we're most fortunate that Deborah has that. But that's only as good as how well it's operationalized, right? And so we have adopted a proven methodology that translates the overarching goals of our strategic plan down to key performance indicators and very detailed plans that everybody is working on to achieve those KPIs. Everybody owns it and is held accountable to it, from our executive team right to our center teams. And we're monitoring and tracking progress towards those individual KPIs that tie to our goals on almost a daily basis. And we have management practices and data that support that. One example of that is, Dr. Graham spoke earlier about the number of evidence-based practices that we have in place. And so just one of those KPIs is measuring fidelity towards each of those evidence-based practices in every single one of our programs across that pretty large footprint that we have. Also measuring risk and safety metrics. We even measure servant leadership, which is often thought of as a kind of broad-based cultural initiative, but we have found a way with working with external experts on how to measure servant leadership down to the numerics of it. So, if it matters and it's important, we measure it. But we also create intentional venues that bring us all together and foster an environment of that shared drive towards our collective goals. Clinical experts as well as operational leaders who come together for each of our various service lines on a monthly basis. And so they are supporting the execution of those KPIs that stem from our strategic plan, but they're also serving to give us feedback from the ground up in terms of what's working and what's not working and what they believe is best for our programs and services. And it's that two-way communication that ultimately leads to the best outcomes and driving the organization forward to be a best-in-class organization.
To build off what Dr. Fernandes says, our efforts are working, and we're really excited by this. And how do we know that? Well, we have third-party validation that they're working. We have states who are approaching us where Devereux is not currently in. We have other providers that are interested in joining Devereux in many different venues. So these are all indications of all the good efforts that both Dr. Graham talked about and Dr. Fernandes talked about, that we have brought that together in a way that's getting noticed. We're thrilled at what lies ahead of us.
Carl, Yolanda, and Rhea, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for your leadership. It's really about helping us know where we are headed and truly how we're going to get there.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you're welcome, Amy.
Our pleasure.
Well, and to all those watching, thank you for your time today, and stay tuned for the next episode of Carl's Fireside Chats. Take care and be well.